I was babysitting for a family that lived in a secluded house in the woods. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who were about 6 and 8 years old. They seemed nice enough, but they had a strange habit of whispering to each other and giggling when I was not looking. The parents left me a list of instructions and told me they would be back by midnight. They also warned me not to go into the basement because it was off-limits and dangerous. I thought that was odd, but I agreed to follow their rules. The night started off normally. I made dinner for the kids, played some games with them, and read them a bedtime story. They went to their rooms without any fuss, and I settled on the couch to watch some TV. Around 10 p.m., I heard a loud thud from the basement. I jumped up and ran to the door, thinking that maybe something had fallen or broken. I tried to open it, but it was locked. I knocked on it and called out, but there was no answer. I was about to go back to the couch when I heard another thud, followed by a scream. It sounded like a child's voice, and it was coming from the basement. I panicked and looked for the key, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I grabbed a chair and smashed it against the door, hoping to break it open. The door cracked, but it didn't budge. I heard more screams and thuds, and I felt a cold sweat on my forehead. I kicked the door with all my strength, and it finally gave way. I rushed down the stairs, holding the chair as a weapon. I reached the bottom of the basement, and I saw a horrifying sight. The kids were standing in a corner, holding hands and smiling. In front of them, there was a large cage with a bloody corpse inside. It looked like a man, but it was mutilated beyond recognition. His eyes were gouged out, his limbs were torn off. The kids' innocent smiles sent shivers down my spine as they turned to face me. The room was dimly lit, revealing unsettling drawings on the walls and strange symbols scattered on the floor. My heart raced as I realized there was something truly sinister about this isolated house in the woods. Ignoring my presence, the children began chanting in a language I couldn't comprehend. The atmosphere grew colder, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows. The cage seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and I could feel a malevolent force emanating from it. As I took a step back, the kids' whispers became louder, almost inhuman. I hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether to flee or confront the disturbing scene before me. The basement's air was heavy with dread, and I knew I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding. Suddenly, the lifeless body inside the cage twitched. The mutilated figure, against all reason, started to stir. It was as if the very essence of death recoiled at the presence of the children. The corpse's mouth opened, emitting an otherworldly wail that echoed through the basement. Terrified, I tried to retreat, but the kids' gaze locked onto me. Their once innocent eyes now glowed with an unnatural gleam. They pointed towards the cage, urging me to witness the horror unfolding. In a nightmarish revelation, the corpse began to convulse, and its limbs started reattaching themselves. The eyes, once absent, slowly regenerated. The room pulsated with a dark energy, and I realized the kids were orchestrating something beyond the boundaries of reality. Panicking, I sprinted back up the stairs, abandoning the shattered door. The basement's haunting screams echoed behind me, and I slammed the door shut, hoping to contain the malevolence within. As I caught my breath, I heard the children's laughter. It was a sinister sound, devoid of any innocence. I realized I was trapped in a nightmarish scenario, surrounded by malevolent forces that defied explanation. With the midnight deadline approaching and the horrifying truth unveiled, I knew I had to find a way to escape the clutches of this eldritch horror that lurked within the secluded house in the woods. The minutes dragged on, and the malevolent presence lingered in the air. As the clock struck midnight, piercing the silence with its chimes, the basement's horrors seemed to recede. My trembling hands reached for my phone, desperate to call for help. The police arrived shortly after my frantic call, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness of the secluded woods. I guided them to the basement, the shattered door a testament to the terror within. With caution, they descended into the dimly lit room. What they found was beyond comprehension. The children, once innocent and playful, now lay lifeless on the cold floor. The symbols and drawings seemed to have vanished, leaving only a chilling memory of the horrors that had unfolded. The cage, however, stood empty, as if the eldritch force had dissipated with the midnight hour. The police questioned me relentlessly, but the words to describe the otherworldly events failed me. They exchanged skeptical glances, treating my account as the product of a disturbed mind. As they conducted their investigation, they found no evidence of foul play, no traces of the eldritch force that had held the basement in its grip. In the end, I became the focus of their scrutiny. Unable to provide a rational explanation for the night's events, I found myself labeled as mentally unstable. The authorities decided that the trauma had fractured my sanity, and I was committed to a psychiatric facility. Haunted by the memories of that fateful night, I became an inmate in a world that blurred the line between reality and nightmare. The echoes of the children's laughter lingered in my mind, and the eldritch force that had been unleashed in that secluded house continued to torment my every waking moment. The truth remained buried, a dark secret confined to the depths of the woods. The malevolent force had vanished, leaving behind shattered lives and a narrative that defied logic. The secluded house stood as a silent witness to the inexplicable, and I, the unwitting protagonist, found myself lost in the corridors of a psychiatric institution, forever entwined with the eldritch horror that had unfolded in the basement of the woods. Emmy entered the house, greeting her hosts, and quickly familiarized herself with the rules. Her gaze wandered around the cozy interior, and a slight smile played on her face. 10-year-old Jake, with merry eyes and a suspiciously mysterious smile, watched everything from around the corner. Emmy, called to look after 10-year-old Jake, was smiling happily. Her parents, with smiles on their faces, handed her a detailed list of rules and, laughing, warned her that Jake loved to play hide-and-seek. After a hearty dinner, Jake, with a lively twinkle in his eye, suggested that Nanny play this exciting game. Emmy, naively believing it to be just another standard childish pastime, agreed. The game began, and at first glance everything seemed to be going according to a known plan. But as they continued, Emmy began to sense something strange that was blurring in the air. At first, when Emmy started counting, it seemed like it was just part of a child's game. However, with each second counted out, she felt something change around her. The dark room that seemed familiar began to take on unpredictable features, as if reality was mixing with a nightmare. Voices reminiscent of children's laughter and whispers began to fill the space, but the source remained invisible. Emmy finished counting down and looked around the room, realizing for the first time that she was no longer in control of the situation. Count or go, she heard Jake's voice, but his smile looked darker and more enigmatic now. Uncertainty slowed her steps, but she decided to keep playing the game. The response to her movements was whispers directing her to different parts of the room. She started to look for Jake, but found him standing in a completely different corner than she had imagined. The smile on his face had taken on a strange, slightly sinister tint. "Now it's your turn," the boy said. Emmy sensed something was going wrong, but decided to continue the game. Closing her eyes, she began counting down, and the same mysterious whisper sounded again. "Don't stop," the voice whispered. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a very different place, dark and gloomy. A misty gloom surrounded her, and mysterious rustles echoed in the distance. The sounds of children's laughter echoed behind her, but when she turned around, she found only an emptiness that seemed endless. Her heart pounded frantically, and she realized that her game with Jake had entered an unexpected and mystical phase. The game of hide-and-seek was getting weirder and weirder. Jake disappeared, as if vanishing into thin air, and reappeared in the most unexpected corners of the room. Echoes of footsteps and unknown voices filled the space, but with every turn of his head, nothing came across. At one point, the game became so unpredictable that Amy lost sight of Jake. She looked around restlessly, trying to figure out where the boy might be. The sound of crying directed her to a dark room, where she found her own reflection in a large mirror that stood in the corner. The dark outline of her figure seemed mixed with frightening shadows, creating the illusion that someone else was present in the room. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she felt that this game of hide-and-seek was turning into a mystical test of her strength and fortitude. Happiness came in the form of the boy's parents returning. Jake came out to them as normal and smiling as if nothing had happened. The parents thanked the nanny for her concern, and in a hurry, she began to pack her things. As she descended the stairs, mysterious whispers and echoes of strange events still sounded in her ears. Suddenly, however, while standing in the shower, Amy again heard a barely audible, childlike voice outside the door that said, "Count or go." The sound seemed to possess her, causing her to shiver. She shivered, turned away from the door, and tried to concentrate on her surroundings. But the shadow of doubt remained, stirring her imagination and reminding her that some games could have consequences no matter how innocent they seemed. Anna had been working as a nanny for the Smith family for 6 months. She loved the 2 children, Lily and Jake, who were 5 and 7 years old. They lived in a large house in the countryside, surrounded by woods and fields. Anna enjoyed the peaceful and quiet atmosphere, away from the noise and pollution of the city. One night, when the parents were away on a business trip, Anna was putting the children to bed. She read them a bedtime story, tucked them in, and kissed them goodnight. She turned off the light and closed the door behind her. She went downstairs to the living room, where she turned on the TV and watched a movie. She felt relaxed and happy. She was about to get up and make some tea when the phone rang. She picked it up and said, "Hello." There was a brief silence, then a raspy voice said, "I'm watching you." Anna felt a chill run down her spine. She thought it was a prank call, so she said, "Who is this? This is not funny." The voice said, "I'm in the house. I'm coming for you and the children." Anna felt a surge of fear. She looked around the living room but saw nothing unusual. She said, "Stop it. Leave us alone." The voice said, "Too late. I'm already here." Then the line went dead. Anna dropped the phone and ran to the stairs. She had to check on the children. She hoped they were safe. She reached the second floor and ran to their bedroom. She opened the door and turned on the light. She gasped in horror. The children were gone. The beds were empty and messy. There were signs of a struggle. The window was open, and the curtains were blowing in the wind. Anna screamed. She heard a loud thud behind her. She turned around and saw a man standing in the hallway. He was wearing a black hoodie and a mask. He had a knife in his hand. He smiled wickedly and said, "Hello, Anna." Anna recognized the voice. It was the same voice from the phone. She realized that he had been in the house all along. He had been hiding in the basement. He had cut the phone line and the power. He had waited for the right moment to strike. He said, "You're a good nanny, Anna, but you're not good enough. You failed to protect the children. Now you'll pay the price." He lunged at her, raising the knife. Anna dodged his attack and ran to the bathroom. She locked the door behind her. She looked for something to defend herself. She found a pair of scissors on the bathroom counter, the only makeshift weapon at her disposal. She dialed the emergency number on her cell phone, desperately relaying the situation to the dispatcher. The sound of approaching footsteps outside the bathroom intensified her fear. Anna pleaded for help, providing the address and details of the menacing intruder who had infiltrated the seemingly peaceful household. The dispatcher assured her that help was on the way, urging Anna to stay on the line. As the minutes stretched into agonizing eternity, Anna could hear the distant wails of sirens growing louder. Hope flickered within her, but the fear for Lily's safety consumed her thoughts. The situation escalated into a tense standoff between Anna and the masked assailant. The dimly lit hallway became a battleground, with Anna armed only with a pair of scissors, determined to protect herself and find Lily. The house, once a sanctuary, now echoed with the ominous footsteps of impending doom. As the intruder closed in, Anna's survival instincts kicked in. She lunged at him with the scissors, aiming for any vulnerable spot. A brief struggle ensued, the small bathroom becoming a claustrophobic arena for a life-and-death confrontation. The intruder, masked and relentless, fought back with malevolent determination. The distant wails of sirens grew louder, signaling the arrival of law enforcement. The intruder, realizing his time was limited, made a hasty retreat, disappearing into the shadows. Anna, now alone in the bathroom, waited anxiously for the arrival of the police, her mind torn between relief and the haunting realization that Lily was still missing. Law enforcement swarmed the house, conducting a thorough search. Despite their efforts, there was no sign of Lily. The investigation intensified, uncovering a twisted web of motives and connections that extended far beyond the peaceful facade of the Smith family's home. As the truth unraveled, Anna grappled with the guilt and anguish of not being able to protect the children. The search for Lily continued, a haunting reminder of the sinister events that had unfolded in the tranquil countryside home. The mysterious assailant, though temporarily evading capture, left behind a trail of unanswered questions, leaving the community on edge and Anna forever changed by the nightmarish ordeal. The investigation took a grim turn as law enforcement delved deeper into the unsettling events. In a chilling discovery, Jake's dismembered remains were found hidden in the darkest corners of the woods surrounding the Smiths' countryside home. The once serene landscape now bore witness to a gruesome tableau of horror, the echoes of a twisted crime that shattered the illusion of safety. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community, leaving them grappling with the unimaginable brutality that had befallen the innocent 7-year-old boy. The masked assailant's sadistic act had not only claimed Lily's freedom, but had also snuffed out Jake's young life in a horrific manner. As law enforcement pieced together the evidence, a sense of dread permeated the community. The tranquility of the countryside now lay shattered, replaced by a haunting awareness of the malevolence that lurked beneath the surface. The search for Lily became not only a race against time, but a desperate attempt to salvage some semblance of justice from the nightmarish events that unfolded in the quiet corners of the Smith family's home.